All right, everyone. How is it going? It's another Monday, the first one before some big holidays. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're warm. Hope you're safe. Hope your family's doing well. We're talking Thrawn tonight. It's our last Roundtable episode of 2021. We've had so many this year. It's only fitting that we end with the Zonmeister himself. We got barely any news. We got a lot of Thrawn. I have a little bit of back pain, but we're ready to go. Wes, punch it.
I wish you would have.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Living Force Utini Network podcast, all about books in 2021 for the final time. I'm one of your hosts, Eric Eilerson, and joining me tonight to finish our roundtable conversation about Thrawn Ascendancy, Lesser Evil, is the full crew, but not where you might expect them. First, however, we have the man who was eating a Cliff Bar at least a few seconds ago, Dr. Corey Helton.
No, we're good. We're good. Or at least it's out of the shot.
Yeah, man, for that branding.
Building up for the holidays, you know, in the true Christmas spirit over this past weekend. Instead of hanging out with my loved ones, I stayed in my office and edited videos for like 9 hours straight. And I basically edited all of the trailer stuff that I had filmed, which I had literally hours of film to sort through. And I basically have 7 weeks of content all ready to go for the YouTube channel. So the trailer is done now. You know, you guys heard me talk about that a couple weeks ago. I put in, I think I might have used power tools for the last time today. I cut a couple of shelves that we needed to put in that I've been putting off forever today. And I got a little emotional as I closed it up. I was like, dang, man, I finished this whole flipping thing. This is crazy. So, you know, I'm awesome. Excited to have that done. I can't wait to show off some builds and stuff at some point.
Well, I can't wait to see the full bit because you have made a dwelling. Charles, I'm assuming, has abandoned his dwelling and burned it down because he's back in his childhood home. It's Dr. Charles Hankel.
That's right, guys. I'm hanging out back home in good old Summerville, South Carolina, my parents' house. Been having a good time. Got into town last night. A couple of my childhood best friends were also in town. We stayed up till 7 a.m. I slept for 3 hours, and here we are.
Holy smokes.
That is the roundtable vibe if I've ever heard it before. I'm glad you got to hang out with your old best friends because now you're here with your new best friends, including the glorious, the light of our lives, the runner of the show, the builder back of his own PC, Wes Jenkins.
Hello. I don't think Charles didn't say anything when you said new best friends. He was just like looked side to side and basically was just like, sure, whatever.
Moved right along.
Where are they though?
This is purely a business transaction for Charles.
Let me tell y'all about my drive-in this morning. My God, it was so good because the school is out and everybody's taking vacation and I didn't have to worry about traffic. Corporate life. What a way to live.
It's the small victories, you know?
Tell us about your computer catastrophically failing this weekend.
So, of course, everybody gets the updates from Windows says you need to update. There's some kind of update. You need to update. It says update and restart or update and shut down. So I chose update and shut down. Well, when I shut down and turned it back on, everything was gone. Everything. I turned it on and it had a blue screen that said you can do these 9 different repair things to see if you can get back to what you're used to, and none of them worked. So I had to delete everything minus like my files. But so yesterday I spent the entire day, not the entire day. I spent 7 hours putting all these glorious scenes y'all see right now back together again. It's like Humpty Dumpty fell off the wall and I fixed it.
My gosh,
you, Wes.
Wes. So you had 7 hours of building your computer back piece by piece.
To be honest with you, I wasn't really mad at it. I like doing stuff like that. So
yeah,
it kept me busy.
I
like being busy.
Well, I'm glad you're back because Wes is running things as he always does nowadays. We are here. We're talking Thrawn. If you're watching us live, hello. We hope you're having a great day. like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. If you're listening to us on your podcatcher of choice, you can leave us a review. Even, this is new, if you're on Spotify. Yes, all of our Spotify listeners, if you go to the Living Force page in Spotify, click the 3 little dots that's like show more, you can now find a rate button. You can rate us 5 stars, just like you can on Apple Podcasts. So go ahead. We'd love some Spotify ratings to kind of help us find some people as the year ends. We would absolutely appreciate that. And of course, while you're there, do that for all of our other shows that you can find on Spotify, like The Cosmic Force and like Legends Look Back, who I want to give a shout out to tonight because last week's episode of Legends Look Back brought back a little bit of a favorite thing of ours that we haven't done in quite a while. They did their own episode of Lightspeed skipping, which is something our patrons have been asking us about for the entire year because this was an old Patreon show we did before 2021, and they brought it back. So if you ever wanted to know what Lightspeed skipping was in the Utini heyday or might be in the future, or if you missed that show, you gotta check out last week's Legends Look Back. It is an absolute hoot. Go to the YouTube channel, the video right before this one, and show them some love. And last thing about love, actually. This is still about love. The Utini voting is almost over, my friends. That's right. The Utinis are next week. They are next Monday night, December 27th at 8 p.m. Eastern. We are going to be dressed to the nines. We're going to have all of our brand new overlays. We're going to have awards that we're giving out. It's going to be a great time, and we need your help still. We have had over 100 community votes, over 30 Patreon votes to help us figure out our Utini winners, but there's still room for plenty more. So as you're watching this, if you get in before Christmas Eve, go to utini.com/awards. There you will find the ballot or the link to the ballot where you can go and vote for your Utini winners, and be sure to come back next week to see who wins our best book of the year, our best moment of the year, best comic of the year, etc. All right. With all that being said, we want to do a couple quick thank yous to our Patreon community. As we said, a bunch of them have been voting in our Utinis, and a brand new patron this week got to vote, David Cross. Welcome. Thank you for being a Patreon subscriber. We hope you're loving things like the new episode of Ghost Crew that we put out last week, and all the shows like the new episode of Star Wars Archives, which had the most disturbing introduction I've ever heard on a podcast. I love you, Jose. That was a lot. But we hope you're enjoying that, and including all of our audio commentaries for the films, all of our extra podcasts over at utini.com/Patreon or patreon.com/Utini. And as always, if you have suggestions for Patreon, goals, things you want us to try out, things you want to be improved, you can contact Timothy, our Patreon manager, through Discord or through Patreon itself. All right, let's do a very quick abbreviated Star Wars Weekly Roundup.
It's the Star Wars Weekly Roundup.
I like that little wipe effect this week. That was different. I like that.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of cool. I like that. Good job, Wes. That's a visual reference for all of our audio listeners. Only a couple things of news this week. We did have a This Week in Star Wars that talked about some things, but most importantly, we heard on January 4th when The Fallen Star by Claudia Gray comes out and gives us the next kind of huge moment in the High Republic at the end of Wave 1 or Phase 1. I can't believe it. I'm never going to get it right. Wave 3 in Phase 1, there's going to be a High Republic anniversary special to celebrate the 1 year. That's right. It's only been 1 year of the High Republic. It will be streaming at 10 a.m. Pacific, so that's 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Central, and then Mountain Time is also in there. It will include interviews with all 5 High Republic architects and, most importantly, the first details on Phase 2 of the High Republic. We're showing here the article on StarWars.com. Guys, I gotta ask you. We have not read The Fallen Star yet, so we cannot spoil anything because we don't know what happens. When we say first details of Phase 2, do you think we're getting the next, like the first wave of book titles? Do you think we're getting new comics? What do you think we're gonna see at this event on the 4th?
I hope they just give us the headliners, like just in general. Like just straight up, like the books, the comics, like the
here's the next 3 books. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of hope that's what it is. I would kind of be surprised if that's not what it is, to be honest.
Yeah, they got to give us. They got to give us some the titles that hopefully give us a like a reveal of some sort. Just like what happens after the Fallen Star.
Yeah.
Because I mean,
I hope it's a bingo card, which is Jedi faces that you cross off as they're killed.
Oh my
Like that X-Men
god!
comic back in the day?
Yeah,
That'd be great.
It's probably that.
What if they pull a Phantom Menace? And remember how the soundtrack for Phantom Menace said like Qui-Gon's death or whatever? Or Qui-Gon's
Qui-Gon's funeral pyre or whatever.
Yeah.
What if they're like, all right, the first book in phase 2 is going to be after the death of Avar Chris. And it's going to be like, whoa.
It could happen.
Again, to be clear, haven't read anything, don't know. But very excited for that. Make sure you tune in. It's going to be in the middle of the day on January 4th. Come on. You can take your lunch break then. Get on your phone. Watch the live stream. It's going to be great. And we can all freak out together in our Discord, which is the best part of all of these. We got another thing, though. We got to reveal an upcoming book next year, Star Wars Stories of Jedi and Sith. We finally got a cover by community-lauded artist Jake Bartok. We knew he was doing the art for the inside on the cover, and look at that beautiful representation of the big baddie himself, Darth Vader. Guys, last time we did a cover reveal, it was not the best. This one, I'm a fan. I like this quite a lot.
Yeah, this
Like
is very Star Wars Rebels vibes. Very.
Yeah, the blue and red, all of it looks really cool. Look at the little. This is subtle. I don't know if you guys noticed that. Did you see the logo at the bottom of the Sith? And,
Oh, I didn't. It is
yeah, and that's
subtle.
actually that is a I only know this because of all the web design that I've done on our site with all the symbols and stuff. That Sith logo is very rarely used. That's very interesting that they put that there. That's the Sith logo from it was in the Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah,
where they showed
that's when they debuted it, and then all the reference books there, they tried to like say, "Oh, this has been the symbol of the Sith." Everyone knows that.
No, that's not true. We never used that ever.
Nope.
So yeah. So this is it's sort of related. This is kind of funny. Quick little tangent story. My brother-in-law is collecting pins. He's been getting a bunch of Star Wars pins lately too, and he texted me a picture this week, and he was like, "What is this symbol?" That is obviously Star Wars. I don't know what it is, and it's the symbol of the Senate. Is the symbol? And I'm like,
The
holy
Senate?
yes. You should look this up right now. There's a picture. There's a symbol. The Republic Senate has this own little like logo seal thing, and I was like, how the hell did you find a
pin of that?
a pin of
crazy,
this? Is
man.
the most obscure reference ever. Sorry, I didn't mean to like interrupt this. But
No,
that was, like,
that is.
super weird.
I'm
I need to
pulling
see
it up
this
right now.
Yeah, Wes, pull it up because this would be the symbol on the Bail Organa novel, I assume, right? It would be the Republic Senate,
yeah.
right? So if we ever get that, I need to know what this is.
I didn't know. Yeah, there
Is
you
it
go.
that?
I didn't know this.
Oh,
yeah,
I've seen that.
I did not know this off the top of my head. I had to look this up. I was like, what the
Okay.
heck is this symbol? Yeah, they don't use it literally anywhere.
Good old Wikipedia. We love y'all.
I know.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Well, there you go. You learn something new every day. And if you want to learn more new things by reading more books, you got to order your books, which is a segue to say go to utini.com and check out our new releases schedule, where you can see that Mission to Disaster, Justina Ireland's middle grade novel, has been delayed again, unfortunately, and will now be sold on March 1st, which means in January we get Fallen Star, in February we get Midnight Horizon with Daniel Jose Older, and then in March we get Mission to Disaster by Justina Ireland, and then in April we get Queen's Hope but E.K. Johnson. So we're getting book. They're spread out, which is nice, so you don't necessarily maybe have to do 2 in a day. But just be a heads up. So keep an eye on your pre-orders. Shipping delays did cause this delay, so be aware. Get the books you want. So, support the authors you need in 2022. All right, with all that said, now, I think this is quick. This is one of our quicker ones. You're welcome, Charles. I'm always trying to impress you. We're going to take a quick break now. When we come back, we are going to finish off our final roundtable of 2021 with Thrawn Ascendancy, Lesser Evil, Part 2. See you in a second. Hey everybody, it is Eric, president of Utini and co-host of The Living Force, which you may be watching right now, here to tell you about something that's going to make the holidays a bit easier. We have made a new website for you called utini.gifts. Now, this is a website that is based around the fact that shopping for Star Wars fans is very hard. We like a lot of things, we also don't like a lot of things. So we at Utini have made some curated gift guides for you to make shopping in your life a little easier and to make shopping for you a bit easier for people in your life. So whether you want Star Wars apparel, you want collectibles, you want stuff for gamers, you want stuff that's only featuring the child, you want stuff for your office, kitchen, what have you, we got guides for you curated through sites like Etsy, through sites like Amazon, through anything you can imagine. We have scoured the internet for really fun stuff
Head over to utini.gifts, that's gifts plural, like things you're going to find under the tree. Get shopping today, get anything you want for the Star Wars fan in your life, and let us know what you think.
All right, and we're back. Look at that. Our maybe final use of that Utini gifts ad. It's not too late. It probably is almost too late for this holiday shopping, but maybe you know someone that has a birthday in January that needs something. Head over to utini.gifts. That site is going to stay active. So for all of your Star Wars shopping needs, we got you covered. All right, Charles, we put some work in last week on Thrawn Ascendancy, Lesser Evil, but it's time to bring us home. Let's do it, man. Roundtable time.
It is time. All right, let's do this. We're going to jump in right where we left off. We're still in the characters section. We've kind of just finished talking about Rosku, who was sort of an adversary for Thrawn. Now we're going to move in and talk about some people who were for sure adversaries of Thrawn, starting with the guy with the coolest name out of this entire trilogy, Kilori of Uondalan. And I don't have any specific quotes about Kilori, but you can safely bet that if I did, they would mention his cheek winglets. But throughout this trilogy,
don't like that.
Seriously, his cheek winglets react to everything that happens.
I know.
I'm kind of a prick. No. That's my impression of Kilori.
So
like
throughout the trilogy, Kilori was like the consummate fence sitter, right? Like he was like pretending to help this side, pretending to help that side. You never really knew where he was going to shake out. In this novel, he ended up playing kind of a major factor in the defeat of Jixtus, despite trying to sell Thrawn out for like the entire novel. So I want to jump to the moment where he made this all important decision, right? Jixtus is in the fate spinner. The ship is trying to escape. He is just, I don't know, snapped his fingers and brought all of the Kilji vassals back to life. And he orders them to fire on Jixtus's ship. It is destroyed. He wins the day. And I want to know, why did he fire on that ship? Did he decide it was the right thing to do? Or, did he just decide the Chiss are about to win this fight and I need to be on the winning side? Like what was it? Why did Kilori do what he did?
Charles, one thing I love you do about these roundtables, one thing I love that you do is you really kind of pose questions and you show both sides, even if one side is so clearly the right answer. Kilori is a sniveling little sneak that has never done anything for the right reasons. He absolutely saw that the Chiss were about to wreck him, and he's like, oh wait, I've been a Chiss opponent the whole time. This guy is a little shit. He absolutely is self-serving and didn't think it was the right thing to do.
And the Kilgees were just like left without a master, and it was this perfect opportunity for him to be like,
dude, that was
what
weird.
about me?
It was weird.
Yeah, literally.
What are they?
It's like when Buzz Lightyear falls into the toy machine and they're like, ah.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Great reference.
It would be like if Corey was just like, guys, I'm leaving Utini, and all of us were just like, like it was just over.
We need a master.
That would be amazing.
Over. Yeah, I mean, Kilori sucks, right? I agree with you, Eric. I think everyone agrees with you, but I gotta ask the question, right? I need the answer, so I gotta ask the question.
Great. That's our next shirt. Kilori sucks, right?
And you're completely right about the cheek winglets thing, because like if anything made him feel nervous or anything made him feel out of place, his cheek winglets fluttered a bit. And I think Mark Thompson must have said that to me 105 times over like 20 chapters. It was
whatever species Kilori is, they're like they can't play poker. It's just not possible for them.
No.
The cheek winglets are almost like a pulse, like
a little bit.
They just start like firing whenever he's nervous.
I wish there was a quick and easy way to like control F and see how many times the words winglets is in this book, because I bet that it's a lot.
Yeah, they're like, oh, it's perhaps. Like, no,
I bet it's in there like 50 times. Like, no kidding.
Yes.
Like it's a lot. Like almost every single scene he's in, it's multiple times. It's talked about.
Yeah. Which reminds me, when I saw the Tim Zahn panel at CTV2, he brought up, like, some people think I used the word, it was the Mark Thompson interview he did on Audible. It's on YouTube. Go check it out. He was like, some people think I use the word perhaps a lot, and Mark Thompson was like, oh my god, really? And like totally played it off like I had no idea. I'm like, Mark, you literally read it. Like, you of all people know. Like, good poker face with Timothy Zahn, but you're not fooling anyone.
That's funny.
Perhaps in winglets.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, let's move on from someone with some weird cheek winglets to someone who we don't even know how they look at all. And that was Jixtus, right? The big bad, the guy who has been the cloaked villain kind of behind the scenes for so much of this trilogy. Mm-hmm. So here's some quotes for you. From page 12, Jixtus is speaking to Nakire, and he says, I know these Chiss, Generalirius. They are resilient and powerful. I've seen them resist attack from without and manipulation from within. Only a combination of the two will succeed in bringing about their destruction. Then we're going to jump to the very end, page 520, when Jixtus is facing his inevitable defeat. He says, the Grisks will be back, his voice cold and dark and malevolent, but you will not be here to stand against them. I wish you and your allies the pleasure of this final memory as you watch your worlds burn. So he went out with a bang. He dropped that massive threat and then hit the big red button that no one is ever supposed to hit, and everything's self-destructed. And I want to know, now that we're past Jixtus, looking back at the trilogy, was he an effective villain for you? And within that question, I'm curious, did his kind of late introduction into this trilogy play any part in that?
Before we answer that, Corey, I need you to look at the YouTube chat right now and see what Maggie just put in the chat and react.
Oh my
honestly.
God. Holy
tell
crap.
Our listeners, tell our audio
Holy
listeners
crap.
what Maggie just discovered.
Maggie said she says, Corey, I looked it up in my ebook and it's used 95 times.
And then the second word she says,
perhaps used 90 times. Winglets wins. That is crazy.
Winglets is used 5 more times than perhaps.
Holy crap. That is
95
incredible.
times.
I've never even noticed the perhaps in the book.
I've never noticed that either. That's like absolutely a writer thing. They're like, oh yeah, I way overuse this word. And they're like all self-conscious about it. But winglets, Timothy's on. This is the PSA. You overuse the word winglets. All right, here we go.
We are firmly anti-winglets.
That is hilarious. 95. 90. I said like 50. 90. Double the amount that I guessed. That is insane.
Well, this book is like 87,000 pages long. So I think that
fair. Still, that's funny.
Sorry, Charles.
All right, back to our question. Jixtus, I have an immediate answer to this because I absolutely love Jixtus as a villain. I'm like, because you guys know, you've heard me talk about, I love Luceno books. I'm like a real big fan of that long build up, developing the enemy type of thing. And like, I love that he was introduced late. I think that it was like kind of I love that they did that general guy. What was his name in the first book?
Yiv
the Benevolent. Yeah. I love that he was the villain, and it ended up being like a false start kind of thing. Yeah, a pawn, right? Like a he wasn't actually the big bad. So I love Jixtus. I think he's interesting. His voice that Mark Thompson did was so good. Every single time Jixtus is talking, he just sounds menacing and evil and that sort of thing. And something kind of related to that too. I really like the pairing of Jixtus and that general guy
Nakira.
of the Nakir.
Generalirius Nakir.
Yeah. Although I will say multiple times in the audiobook, I had to turn the volume down in my car because every time his voice comes on, it's this awful guttural sound. Mark Thompson was way above and beyond for this particular character, and it was just very hard to listen to when he had long monologues. Like, I'm not sure if Thompson knew what he was getting into when he picked that voice as that alien. Like, maybe he should have flipped forward a whole bunch of times to figure out how much he was going to have to do that crazy voice for. But I loved their back and forth. And then like at the end when Jixtus like totally ripped the rug out from under him, was just like, you have had no control the whole time. It's always been me. Like, get out of my face. And then he kills him in point blank range, cold blood. It's just like, holy shit. I loved it. It was really good.
Yeah, like talking about Jixtus, if you could put Jixtus's voice from Mark Thompson at like a 1.6 and then the rest of the book at a 1, then that probably would have worked better because whenever Jixtus was
talks
talking
so slow.
so slow.
It's true.
But No, right. I thought he was a great villain, especially because he used manipulation rather than like pure brute force or something to try to get his cause to be utilized. But they also said that Jixtus was short. He was short. He was shorter than Nikiri. He was shorter than the Chiss. And
Would you say he's about Corey's height?
I knew this was going to be an attack on me. I freaking knew it. I knew as soon as you said short, I smiled. I was like, this is going to be a freaking attack.
I will say,
I kept
stand a
looking.
short king.
Yeah. I kept looking online to see if I could get some kind of artist rendering of him, but I couldn't find one. Not a good one, anyways. They don't have it on the book, so I was just trying to get some kind of glimpse, and it probably would have been was like a hood. He probably would have looked like a Jawa. It's freaking short, and he wears a hood.
I was also thinking about that like throughout this book too. Is I had this weird like existential conversation with myself about Jixtus, because every time it talks about him wearing like a hood and a cloak the whole time, and I was just like kind of thinking about how unrealistic it is that there are these characters in Star Wars that literally nobody sees them except without their hood, like in Emperor Palpatine too, right? Like Sidious, and like do they like just not go in like well lit rooms, because like they would have to like tuck that shit like way over their face.
Well,
so you
Jixtus
actually
had
can't
like a
see.
mask too. He said, didn't he? He had gloves and like
Was it?
Jixtus's thing was that's the thing. I also had a tough time like trying to picture him, because I think I had like halfway between like a Dementor and like a little bit of Marky and Rowe in there. Like, it was interesting for me, because I agree. I think Jixtus was a great villain, despite my if y'all remember the last round table when I lost my mind over it being a Grisk reveal. As much as we're gonna talk about this later on, so I don't want to get too ahead of us, but my thoughts on the Grisk definitely changed in especially this book. I thought Jixtus was a great antithesis to Thrawn, because I think, Corey, you were saying like you like how he manipulated people and used them, because I think that is exactly the inverse of Thrawn, who is also more on the outside. Like, he's not necessarily at the front leading like combat, but he is always using people in a chess game, but he doesn't want to sacrifice pieces. He's like, I will move you to use you the most effectively because I can see the board. Jixtus can also see the board, but he is like, I am sacrificing aggro. It's literally two types of chess players.
Yeah.
Like, those guys that like, I'm going to throw all my pawns out in front. They're going to die immediately, but it'll open it up. As opposed to that person who's like, I'm going to try to lose as few pieces as possible. It'll take me longer, but I'm a little more methodical. And I loved watching the two of them just maneuver each other throughout. And again, the end of him being the Grisks will be back is such a great, number one, little insurance plan to Zahn, who is nothing if not able to write himself into future contracts.
That's so
How
true.
does it end? Well, I don't know. I'll tell you for like $30,000. But props to Zahn for giving himself an out. But I also like the fact that he's like, the whole book is about them finding evidence, right? Every single thing at the beginning is like, let's go here and look for the ships and find evidence. Let's go here and look for the ships and find evidence. Jixtus, his whole thing is like, you will never see my face. You will never know who I am. I will atomize myself, not only to Thrawn, but to the reader. Like, us as readers, we didn't get the behind the scenes thing of what the Grisk are. Like, that secret is kept from everyone. And I like that he took that to his grave. And I thought that was a nice, really strong choice.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. And you bring up the fact that he just self-destructed, right? Everything's gone. Absolutely everything. And I'm curious about this. Like, were y'all under the impression that Jixtus was like the leader of the Grisks? Or is he just a leader of the Grisks, right? Because he kind of yeah, I mean, I kind of thought he was going to escape.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Not.
Yeah, I couldn't figure that out. Like, is he like Emperor Palpatine type character where he's like kind of behind the curtain a little bit, like he's behind the scenes, like just pulling the strings, like the puppet master kind of thing? Like, I don't know. I couldn't really figure that out, because he did consult with the Grisk multiple times. Also, I just want to point out, we're going to talk about this later, but we didn't learn jack shit about the Grisk in this entire trilogy.
Nope.
I can't wait to talk more about that. But like, even with everything that we had about Jixtus and stuff, I don't feel like we learned a damn thing. So that's just
I completely agree. And he's also like Thrawn in that way. When Thrawn comes into the Empire, we're like, oh my gosh, he's the Chiss. He is the guy. But then in this trilogy, we learn, no, he's like he's a commander. Like, there are tons of Chiss way higher than him, and I think that's also the exact mirroring with Jixtus. We come in and because he's the only one we see, we assume he's the leader. But like, no, I think he is like a Thrawn level dude.
Yeah.
I think he's like a commander or something, and was essentially a scout, much like Thrawn, to be like, I can try to take over the galaxy by myself, which is also terrifying because if a commander level Grisk can almost destroy the entire Chaos and Ascendancy, imagine what, the leaders can do.
Yeah.
And I think that was kind of the point.
I guess I thought he was the leader reading the book, but now that I think about it, I mean, if you're the leader, you wouldn't be going out and doing these specific missions and putting yourself at risk, right? You'd be back like with somebody.
Wes, putting yourself at Grisk. Putting yourself at Grisk.
Man, I set myself up so good for that.
Oh man,
damn it, that's so good, Eric. I appreciate you so much.
Yeah, sometimes I think I shouldn't say those things. That's a real like Grisk reward situation. You gotta weigh in and balance.
Oh, damn it. Oh, you get it? All right, Corey.
Stop it. Stop it.
So
All right.
let's move on because y'all want to talk about the Grisks. We're gonna get there in a second if we just jump into overarching questions. But first, the first big question I have for you, which we sort of addressed last week a little bit, is how does Lesser Evil compare to Chaos Rising and Greater Good? And then beyond that, even though this is the part we touched on last week, how do you rank all of the Thrawn trilogies? So that's including, the Heir to the Empire trilogy, the previous canon trilogy, and now this one.
I'm excited to answer this question because I was thinking about this a great deal because you guys know I didn't plan this and do it on purpose as like some sort of academic thing. I just needed something to listen to. I re-listened to the first Thrawn book like in the last 2 months, right? And while I was working on the trailer and stuff. And like going from that book is the last Thrawn book I read before I read this book, right? So I've read the first 2 of this trilogy and then the original Thrawn book and then this book. And I think it holds up pretty dang good. I mean, I'm like a sucker for origin stories. So like the first book in any trilogy always really, really hooks me. I mean, that's the case with Bane, with Heir to the Empire, with like the original Thrawn books. Like I'm always a sucker for the origin story. And it's really easy to mess up the third book in a trilogy. Like we don't feel like it concludes well, but I felt like it concluded pretty dang well. Like it sets up the first Thrawn book really, really well. I'm very glad that I just read that because like I had a lot of questions about Thrawn's origin with the Empire and they flow together really nicely between this book and that book. So I think it holds up well. I need to re-listen to the Heir to the Empire series. I haven't read those books. I mean, you guys have all read them way more recently than I have. I mean, it's been literally like a decade since I've read them. So, I would like to pick that up and compare this trilogy. I think if we're talking pure trilogies though, the Ascendancy trilogy compared to the first canon Thrawn trilogy is not even a competition. In reality, like the first Thrawn book is kind of by itself, and you have the next 2 books, which we kind of didn't love, to be honest. So I think it holds up pretty dang well.
What about this versus Chaos Rising Greater Good? Rank the 3.
I think I would do which one is which? Chaos Rising is the first one.
Yep. And then Greater Good's 2 and Lesser Evil's 3.
Yeah, I think I would do the first one, Chaos Rising, then Lesser Evil, then Greater Good. I think is how I would do it. So 1, 3, 2.
Cool.
I think that's how I would do it.
Yeah.
What do you guys
Wes,
think?
what do you think? I'm gonna go to Wes.
Okay, so I would rate. Well, just rate the books in the trilogy. I would rate Lesser Evil 1, Greater Good 2, and then Chaos Rising 3. I really like this book. It was especially the very ending, which shows us why he was actually exiled and the reasoning behind it. But I have a special place in my heart for the Heir to the Empire trilogy, just because it was my first Star Wars trilogy, and compared to all the canon that I've read, it is out there, and they're too wide timelines, I guess. That I really liked the Legends Thrawn trilogy probably the best. Now, saying that, I remember after I was finished with When did they say he was a Grisk? Was it after Chaos
The end
Rising?
of Greater Good, I think.
Greater
The end of
Good,
Greater
yeah,
Good.
the second one. Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause he was like barely in the first one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's when you specifically asked me, Charles, can you believe it? Can you believe what happened at the end? The Grisks. And I was like, sure.
Oh, that's right.
I have not read Alliances or Treason in the first canon Thrawn trilogy. So I was just like, yeah, they're Grisks. What's the problem?
Treason.
If I had
would
actually
like to go
read
back
them,
and
then it
listen
would have
to-
been a big reveal, I'm sure.
Yeah, I would really like to go back and listen to Treason again. I think after this, because that's the one where I first introduced the Gris, like in the timeline, essentially, right? Like of
Yeah.
well, when these books came out. I would like to see how that book holds up because I remember the Arlani stuff being really good in that book and that sort of thing. But the Grisk were like this weird evil that we still don't know anything about.
So I need to read those because I'm interested to know what happened or what happens with him and Anakin, or him and Vader. Because I mean the cover of the book looks great. So
It sure
that's
does.
Something I should. Thanks, Eric. So I mean, what I have a week and a half before the Fallen Star comes
Star?
out, so
Yeah.
I might be able to knock that out on an audiobook. Well, who knows? But yeah, answering your question, I love the Legends Thrawn trilogy the best, but Lesser Evil is my favorite of the trilogy of the second Thrawn canon trilogy.
That's
Okay.
the
Nice.
that's the second one, right? It was
No, that's this one.
is it, no wait, this one's oh shit. I cannot keep these
This
names
one's the
straight like
second-
at all.
The second
This is the
canon
audiobook
Thrawn.
thing, I think.
Yeah, this is an audiobook problem. That is what this is. It's very
So-
frustrating.
I love both those answers. I like, especially because Corey, I still remember to this day how excited you were about Chaos Rising existing. Like you gave it a perfect 10 on the
I
show.
did. It
was
was
our
phenomenal.
book of the year.
I loved it.
And it changed my entire life about Thrawn. Like I
Yeah.
got him.
Mhm.
Wes, I like your order specifically because you went 3, 2, 1, which means for you each book in the trilogy got better, which is kind of the ideal. That's what you want, is that the author gets better. And Charles, I want to hear yours, but I will say, I'm tilting. I'm tilting now. I'm gonna say I think Lesser Evil is the best. However, I think Chaos Rising is my favorite. Like, so I'm gonna go Chaos
Okay.
Rising number 1. I'm gonna go Lesser Evil 2, like very, very close, and that could change based on the day. Honestly,
Yeah.
mainly because of the Thras stuff. I think really brought Lesser Evil up for me, and then Greater Good is the last. Stephanie Mack in the chat said something I very much agree with. Greater Good was a little all over the place and a little tricky to follow for me as well, with all the storylines, and they bounced around with the memories. It was a bit harder for me, but I will say Ascendancy trilogy firmly number 1 for me. Legends trilogy number 2, because I really like all the Mara stuff, especially. I think he writes the original trilogy characters very well, and it's just very epic. And number 3 is the first Thrawn canon trilogy. Like you guys said, I think Thrawn itself is very good. The first origin story, very good. Thrawn Alliances and Thrawn Treason are my 2 least favorite canon books I have ever finished. And I have not revisited them since I first read them. I don't have time to revisit books, but hypothetically, if I did, I also would like to go back now with this trilogy in mind and kind of put that on. And also all the Padme stuff we now know, I'd like to put that on.
Yeah.
So, which also, I don't mind working a little harder to like books. That's okay. But those really were pretty rough. So, Chaos Rising, Lesser Evil, Greater Good for the trilogy. Ascendancy, Legends trilogy, first canon. That's my order.
Okay.
Charles.
Yeah. So everyone's a little bit different. I will say for this trilogy, I'm putting Lesser Evil number 1. I think this was the best book, and I agree, mostly because of the Thras stuff. I thought that was really powerful, and getting the payoff is always helpful, right?
Yeah.
But this book stands on the shoulders of the other 2, and so it's a bit unfair to rank them. Chaos Rising number 2 for me, and then Greater Good number 3, because I agree it was all over the place, but I will say that the actual plot line of like this jewelry, using this jewelry to like secretly make multiple families like think there's some Nyack's mind and trick them all into going to try to take over the mind and fight each other. I thought that was more impressive as a plot and like as a ploy that Jixtus put out than even what happened in this book.
I agree. I agree 100%.
I thought that was really impressive.
It was very convoluted. And
Yeah.
It was,
like,
but
in a
once
good-
you
in a good
understood
way.
it,
Yeah,
like
in a good
once
way.
the flip switch, it was like, holy crap.
It's like
Yeah.
Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Greater Good does have the best
That's true.
pulling the rug out moment when you realize,
Yeah.
oh my God, wait, it's a civil war? Like that
Yeah.
moment I think is higher than the reveal in Lesser Evil, which is just a great battle, which is
Yeah.
awesome. But I agree, Charles. Great point.
Yeah. And then trilogies, yes, this is the best one for me. Number 2 being Legends, number 3 being the first canon Thrawn trilogy. So I definitely agree with that. Y'all have already talked a lot about like my next question, but I still have a question on the back of it. The Grisks, right? Like we spent so much time on the Grisks.
Sure.
And we still don't know anything about them. Exactly like Corey said. We used to moan and groan about them. If y'all have not read the Thrawn Alliances and Thrawn Treason, and you've not listened to our roundtables, it was one of the things we were a little bit more down on, not as excited about. And now that we've gotten,
We hated them pretty hard. I'll say,
Yeah,
like, we were not. We were younger. We were a little more fiery in our younger age. We were pretty brutal on those books.
we were not nice. We were not nice to the Grisks. Now we've gotten essentially a whole nother trilogy that involves them. And I'm curious, where do you sit with them now? And beyond that, do you want more? Like, do you need answers to the questions that we still have about them? Do you want to see them come back beyond what we got in Treason and Alliances?
I feel like the Grisk are the closest thing in canon that we've ever gotten to the Yuuzhan Vong.
Yes.
Right? And in Legends, right? So
Yes.
if you're not familiar with this plot line, the New Jedi Order series in Legends is a 19-book series all about the Yuuzhan Vong invasion, who are the species of aliens. Like, it feels like Star Trek, to be honest. This weird species of aliens who their entire civilization is built around like biologic warfare, and all their ships are like living creatures, and it's crazy. And are these insane aliens from out beyond wherever space, lesser space, and like they just invade and wreak havoc on the galaxy. And I think that's what this is trying to be, but it's still, even after all this time, has not hit the mark. I feel like even in this book, we got some cool stuff of like their ships are utterly devastating, and like they're ultra powerful, but like we didn't get enough. Still, we got Jixtus, and that's it. But he was not on a Grisk ship. He was on a friggin' like whatever Killju warship, right? He was on a Killju, and then he got on his flagship. But that whole Fate Spinner last battle thing was like such a blur. So much stuff happened in that one scene. Like
he mostly hid in the upper atmosphere of the planet on the Fate Spinner.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So I feel like we still missed it. Like if we would have gotten like an entire plot line where Thrawn like got to visit a planet that the Grisk had like conquered, and they had truly conquered it, like killed the entire population or something insane like that, like maybe I could appreciate it, but it doesn't feel like a threat worth like faking your exile and going to work for the Empire. It doesn't feel like that level of threat. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
I feel like if they had had a scene where the Chiss or even the Killji had like approached a group of people and they all turn around, it's all these hooded Grisks, and there's like a million of them, and you can see them like how they, like you said, Corey, how they say it took over a planet, or they like murdered an entire race.
They
of
weren't
people.
scary.
Yeah. Just the one doesn't scare me. If if they had said something, or if Zahn had said something or alluded to there being like the planet where they all, scheme and plot, then maybe they would give me some kind of inkling of being afraid of him. But I wasn't too afraid of him. I mean, he had a pretty cool voice.
They got their ass kicked by a little fleet of Thrawn and his bros, right? Like, it wasn't even like the real Chiss army. It was just like, just Thrawn and his friends.
Yeah,
maybe that's what he wants us to believe.
Maybe, because I will say, hilariously, I agree with all your reasonings, but I came to opposite conclusion. Because I agree, I think we saw only the one, and it wasn't that much of an outward show of force. But because we saw so few, and he was able to do so much in the trilogy, I thought that made him more threatening.
Yeah.
Because in treason or alliances, one of the two, who's to say? I guess treason.
Alliances is the Anakin one. That's pretty much all
That's
you need
true.
to
So
know.
I guess this is treason. Thrawn made a big deal about how the Grisks would come into a civilization, and they didn't come with giant armies. They would essentially infiltrate, turn the tide of the culture, and then use them as weapons. Basically,
But
like the
not the
Civil War
Grisk
thing.
though. That was just Jixtus.
Yeah. Right, but I'm saying like that was the legend of what the Grisk would do, and I think we see that with Jixtus almost gets that. He almost gets that at the end of Greater Good, and only if Thrawn hadn't been there to break a lot of rules and essentially talk the Chiss out of Civil War, I think it would have succeeded.
Yeah,
And
that's fair.
which I think shows the importance of both Thrawn and Jixtus. But all that being said, I think what this trilogy did was turn the Grisk from someone that I was just so out on and annoyed by if they existed to now, like, there was that little rumor that if the guys that bang in the drums in the Star Wars Eclipse trailer, if those were Grisk, or if like Markian Road turned out to be a Grisk, or
yeah.
honestly, if they show up now, I'll be like, oh, rad, cool. Like I'm actually
I
very
totally agree
excited
with
for
that.
them.
Yeah, if they are brought in some other medium, I will 100% be on board. Like, I definitely appreciate them
That's
as
the
a big idea now, which, like, I feel like it has to be somewhere along the lines. Like, let's speculate for a quick second. We don't like doing that a whole lot. You know? But like, how is this plot line going to be concluded? Like, is it going to be concluded? Like, how the hell are they going to do it? Is this going to be the Thrawn, Ezra, Ahsoka show? Is this what this is going to be?
I think Thrawn. Here's the thing, because we can speculate, but before we get into too many speculations, I'm going to be the slight Debbie Downer wet towel, which is the fact that Timothy Zahn writes these books in a vacuum. Like, Story Group has an idea, but he does not talk to Dave Filoni. He does not write on the shows. Like, Timothy Zahn, he said, like, he has reached out, like, hey, if you want input from me, like, they do not ask him for it. Like, Zahn is writing these because Zahn writes Thrawn trilogies, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And I think the Grisk, in his mind, the Grisk could absolutely be a galactic threat. And I would frankly love if in the Ahsoka show, she finds Thrawn and Ezra, and Thrawn has told Ezra the story of the Grisk, and that's the thing. Realistically, I don't know if Filoni's doing that. I think it'll be something different because that seems like not really that vibe. But that being said, I do think there is a possibility of a future series that takes like Aralani and Samcro and Cherry and them to further fight the Grisk like without Thrawn. I don't know if it would work, but I think that he has essentially created such or Thrawn's return to the Ascendancy. Like, I think there is definitely a possibility of furthering the Grisk storyline with them, but I don't think we're going to see it in mediums that aren't books.
Well, let me ask you this, Eric, because you were at that panel with Zahn recently, like last weekend or whatever, and we talked briefly. There were some rumors a couple weeks ago that maybe Zahn are retiring from Star Wars books. Did he have any comments about anything in that regard?
Not that I heard. I missed a couple questions. But as much as I could tell, he seemed in his discussions that like he is always willing to write the books if the contracts are sent. I think is the lamest way to say it. Like he was very clear. He's like, I write these books to feed my family, and I have a good time doing it. And I think if Star Wars was like, hey, we want another Thrawn trilogy, I think he'd absolutely do it.
So it sounds like he does not have a contract in hand for the next project.
No,
is what it sounds like.
Not that I've heard, because what happened with this one apparently was that Tom, our buddy Del Rey, he literally took Zahn out to breakfast at Celebration and said, hey, would you ever want to do another Thrawn trilogy of like a younger Thrawn? And Timothy Zahn said, oh, that would be cool. I don't know if they'd go for it though. And Tom literally said, no, they've already signed off on it. I'm pitching it to you. So that's how this one came about. So whether that's going to happen again, maybe. But I also think that could make up for the fact where he's like, I don't know, I don't have a contract. But maybe Tom and the folks at Del Rey are already kind of figuring out the next pitch.
Fair enough.
So just pointing out where we are in the timeline right now. This is between episode 3 and 4.
This here,
No.
This,
I think
Very
this is
end.
2 and 3.
at the end
At
of
the end
this at the end
Yeah.
of this novel,
Okay, yeah, it's true.
Revenge of the Sith had just happened.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
right.
Right,
That's right.
because the
Yeah, yeah.
exile is Vader.
We talked
right.
about that. All right, I just want to say really quick that whole little tie-in of like the word on the street is that this one guy is now in charge. Like that shit was awesome. I
Yeah.
loved that small addition. I'm talking about Anakin, kind of like in the third person sort of like that
Yep.
sort of meta discussion of like surely General Skywalker is still alive, or at least someone will have remembered him. I'm just like, dude, that was cool. I
Yeah.
loved that. That was a great tie-in.
And it's like Thrawn. That's a great point. However, the weirdest stuff has happened.
Yeah.
You would not believe what's going on with
Yeah.
General Skywalker in the last week.
Yeah, exactly. He has less
like-
limbs than he had previously. Let's just say that.
But you think about it, if Thrawn had been exiled 3 weeks earlier, what if he would have seen Anakin again? And then what if Anakin finds
Yeah.
Thrawn and doesn't become Darth Vader?
I wonder how Thrawn would have reacted to being on the sidelines as Order 66 happened. That would have been very interesting thought line too. Of like,
'Cause he's
seeing
still pretty emotional at this point. Like, I
yeah,
think
would he be
still
would he
would've
be
felt
like
it was
would he be
wrong.
like super freaked out that like holy crap the entire government has collapsed? Like
You can't help
Dude,
me fight
what
the
if-
risks.
What if he did get picked up from a world early? Remember they said that they were going to drop him on a world. He's going to hopefully get picked up. And if it didn't work, they'd move him to a new
Yeah.
one. What if he did get picked up? He was like on a military ship when Order 66 happened and he had to start over. He had basically had
Yeah.
to start over and just drop down to a new planet.
Oh,
Write
he's
it,
like,
write
oh,
it, Zahn.
God.
yeah, right.
Why not?
Yeah, seriously.
Star
Yeah,
Wars
the
What
whole-
If.
I will say now having done we get to see how he was exiled, and we also get to see like how the exile plays out, like in the first Thrawn book. It's like barely plausible, quite frankly. Like the whole thing of like this one admiral like somehow gets him in front of Palpatine like immediately is kind of like out there. I mean, maybe there's some kind of policy in the Empire. If you find a new alien, you bring him to the Empire and win some brownie points. I don't know how that works exactly, but like
It's an odd one.
I remember thinking about it like while I was listening to it of like how he got the audience with the Emperor was like somewhat unbelievable, like from a storytelling perspective. So, but
Yeah.
I still
He may have been busy in the first month of a new empire.
that's true. Yeah, just a
Yeah.
little bit, you know.
Nah, Zahn was definitely like, you know what? This is people's favorite character from Legends, basically. If I can put him and Palpatine together, and they'll just think it's so dope, they won't question how he got there. And you know what? You're right.
Yeah,
Fan
absolutely
service.
right. It still works. Like, don't get me wrong, it still
No,
works.
but
And I
it's a
have said
stretch.
I've said over and over again that the Thrawn book may be one of my all time favorite books, and I said that. I don't remember if I said that it's still in my top 5 or it's right out of my top 5 after having
Yeah, it's
listened to it
coming out.
recently, but it's still definitely in my top 10. So I still absolutely love the story.
Yeah. But it is a little. Woo!
Yeah, the entire and seeing them kind of coming up with the plan of like, yeah, I'm just gonna get in front of the Emperor is like, all right, bro, I'm just gonna
Hey.
get an audience with President Biden. Let's just make it happen
Yeah,
by next
good
week.
luck.
It's like, yeah, it's like, all right, yeah, kind of a stretch.
Yeah. Well, it is interesting too to bring up the point of like more or less handing off this character to Favreau and Filoni, right? With whatever it is that they're putting together, because the
That's a good
books
point.
really are building up Thrawn's sole purpose and mission as like kind of figuring out a way to defeat the Grisks. And the more books that Zahn writes, it's going to become more and more apparent that that's like his kind of his mission, and obviously to defend that ascendancy
Yeah.
itself. And then whatever we get in the TV side of things, if it's not his mission, it may not feel as Thrawny as we're expecting.
Yeah, right.
I was thinking about that too. Like if they just, if however they bring him into the live action stuff, if they just like straight up make him like a villain, like an evil, moralist,
Yeah.
no values, kill all the children villain. Like
Yeah.
I'm,
Yeah.
we're not gonna buy into that at
Yeah.
all. It's gonna be
Yeah,
kind
no.
of it's gonna be a problem. Like
Well, we-
I mean,
we
you know,
talked-
as much as Favreau and Filoni are like talk, I mean, they're genius storytelling. I mean, you listen
Right.
to anything of them behind the scenes, and they're like, they get Star Wars better than we get Star Wars, like by far.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So like, surely they're like reading the books or at least skimming them, like as they come
They
out.
know what's
particularly,
happening.
yeah, right.
Do you think they read the books?
I don't
think
think they
Filoni-
read them.
I don't think
Filoni
they read
might.
them, but I think they participate with. The
I think
books.
they get cliff notes from someone
Story group?
higher
Okay.
up. Yeah, story group.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, especially with Thrawn, like, hey, there's a very very clear Thrawn trilogy coming out now, especially since he was a book character. Like, there's still books going on. I think they obviously know that. I also think that seeing what they're doing now with Boba Fett, going from the killer assassin to now this show's making him the protagonist, that he's going to be brutal, but he'll have a heart of gold. Like, that's what Star Wars is taking the guys that are the brutal killers, and then all of a sudden they have a heart of gold and change of heart. And I think that if Thrawn comes into the Ahsoka show, which I assume he will, I think it's definitely going to be like we're going to see each other. Oh, God, fight. Thrawn, I've been looking for you. Wait, he's not who you think he is. It's me, Ezra. Like, I think there will definitely be a calming down of that, and Thrawn he'll pull a Loki. He's the murderous guy that turns to the good side because there's a bigger threat in play. And it's whether it's the Grisk or whatever it is.
It is sort of a test, though. Like in my opinion, I know that we are very much a positive community, and we find the joy in everything, and we absolutely believe in that. And whatever they end up doing, even if it's counter to the discussion that we're having right now, we will fall in love with it, right? I mean, that's how we operate, right? But this is somewhat of a test, right? Because this is the entire reason that Disney sort of like set aside Legends and created the concept of Legends. They didn't want the stories happening in the books and comics to interfere with the stories that can happen on screen.
Visuals, right.
And now we're having them happen sort of simultaneously, right? So this is a test. Like, it's a test to see if they can handle the idea of storytelling happening in different mediums and still telling a cohesive story, because they could really pretty easily mess it up, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I think the Thrawn that we've seen throughout history, through Rebels and the books and all this kind of stuff, has been pretty consistent. But like, Thrawn has been a villain in Legends and in Rebels, right? So it's very interesting that we have him almost a good guy in this series.
I will say, quick plug, if you're on our Patreon, our most recent episode of Ghost Crew that came out this past week, on the episode Inside Man in Season 3, Charlie and I have a talk about this, because I said, doing this episode where Thrawn comes in as a villain and does some like messed up stuff in that episode between Roundtable episodes talking about how he's a hero was very interesting. So if you haven't rewatched Rebels since you've read these books, I highly recommend it. Go check out our episode about it, because we go into very big depth about what it means to view Thrawn in Rebels through the lens of the Ascendancy trilogy. Plug.
That's like a whole episode in and of itself right there.
Oh, yeah.
Let's talk about some other new stuff that we got in this trilogy. And we've seen some new Force abilities in this trilogy, right? Third Sight, as it's called by the Chiss, is kind of the most well-known, which is what allows the Skywalkers or the navigators to find their way through hyperspace. Now, Second Sight is less focused on, but it is a Chiss ability that we learned about actually from the previous Thrawn trilogy. So as we learned about it, you haven't learned about this yet.
Second side, you say.
Yes. It's telepathy. Okay. And we kind of saw like that on steroids with what the Magus did in this book with Sherry, right? She was speaking to her telepathically, more or less, but then also took over her entire body. You know, that happens sometimes.
Yeah, you know.
That was creepy.
Who among us hasn't? You know?
Yeah, you know, sometimes you take a left when you meant to take a right. It happens. But what did y'all think of that moment? I'm curious, because it was a relatively quick moment. It ended. We all moved past it. But I mean, that's kind of a big deal. Like, how did that land with y'all?
It was a really big deal in the audiobook because it was Cheery, it was Cheery's character, but it was the Magus narrating.
Yeah.
So it was, the entire scene was in the Magus's voice. So
That's cool.
Yeah, it was very good in the audiobook. And it was
audiobooks
kind
are
of
rad.
Very good.
It was scary. I mean, there's absolutely pros and cons to audiobooks. Like, you know, I can't remember any of the names of the books apparently, but you know, that entire scene was like really scary. Like, I was like, let go of my girl. Come on. What are you doing? Let go of her. I didn't like it. It was scary. I thought something bad was going to happen. I thought they were going to hurt her or kill her or something. I was like, I don't like this. Yeah. I don't know where this is going.
Well, the Force is being really expanded lately in all the books, right? I mean, we got in Light of the Jedi, one of the first things they do with Avar Kriss is link up together to move the the thing from blowing up in the asteroids, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Or from blowing up into the sun. Like, so that is a Force ability. Now, that kind of Force connection. And I think as the years go on, the Force is becoming more about connection. Connecting, like, the tree, the rock, the blah, blah, like, all that stuff is really becoming huge. And I think that part in here, I was like, oh, they're really stepping on it. Like, if you're not trained in the Force, but are trained in the sight, like, Sherry was essentially leaving herself open as a vessel, and the Mage's like, oh, cool, that's an open pathway. I'm just gonna dive right in because the Force like allows me to do that. And I think I want to see what the Chiss now do, because they had their Black Widow Red Room project where they were brainwashing all the girls and turning them into navigators.
Good reference.
I want to know
good
now what
reference.
the Chiss will. It's immediately what I thought of. I'm like, you are ruining these young women's lives. But then they're like, okay, now that we know this can happen, what are the Chiss like 200 years down the line when they realize what is possible with the Force and things like that? And I'm like, ooh, okay. I was caught by it, but like the Grisk, I became very interested for the future of it in the Ascendancy itself.
Yeah, it's kind of cool that they were talking about how the mages can potentially see like a little bit into the future of how a battle is going to go, and then be able to maybe change some of those events. I mean, it's kind of like what Jedi do, even though it's only a couple of seconds, right? Like they do see a move
she's Force
ahead,
sensitive,
more or
straight
less.
up.
And
So
when that was brought up at the council meeting that Thurfian went to, he was telling him that this Magus or this being can connect with our Skywalker's third sight. The Boadil was like, well, it wouldn't be useful for investments. And I was like, no, of course it would be useful for investments. You
What do you
idiot.
mean?
Like, of course you
Sell,
wanna
sell,
use
sell,
it.
sell, sell.
That was so funny. Yeah, maybe not bonds, but options trading. Let me tell you. Oh man, that was funny.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of third sight, y'all, Kalori figured it out. Like he
Did.
knows
Yeah.
that the Chiss navigators, the Skywalkers, are all children. I'm gonna ask this question in a very pointed way. Did anyone
it.
else think it was super random when he just realized all of a sudden he was just like, fire on that warship? Oh my God, they're children. Like it was like so. It was so.
Yeah,
just
That's why they're
sudden.
tiny chairs.
Yeah, that's
Literally,
why.
the way he figured it out, because I'm in a gamer chair, I can adjust the stuff. He's like, wait a minute, this was last adjusted for a child. I'm like, or like a short dude, man. Like,
I was
It was a
imagining
leap.
that.
It was a leap.
I was laughing when that scene happened because like when he was describing the stuff, I was imagining like one of those little tiny like plastic like bright pastel color like kindergarten chairs I'm talking
my
about
God,
that are obviously tiny and
play
made
school.
for very exactly like they're obviously made for children, and like that's the chair, that's the one that's there, just like
where they sit
oh
in these
yeah,
chairs.
it's for kids. Oh yeah, it's not just a stupid small chair. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, there's 34 juice boxes on the floor. Holy shit! Yeah,
exactly.
I didn't. Yeah, he didn't need to figure that out, but he did now. I agree. It was a bit of a stretch, and I'm like, shake your winglets and do something else, man.
I will-
Like,
I will
Shake your
say-
winglets. Never say that again.
I will say though that if you have not read the entire first canon trilogy, which does come after this in the timeline, like there is payoff, like that someone figured it out. So Wes, some of the events of those books, someone needed to figure out that the navigators were children for those events to
Yes.
happen.
How
So,
have you not read that, Wes?
Okay.
You're on a Star Wars book pod. You're a disgrace. You know that?
oh Lord,
hey, Wes, how's Revenge of the Sith?
Your face.
I think I was brought on at a time where we weren't actually
my
reading
God.
books for this
we were not
podcast.
actually reading books yet at that time.
They're actually not very good. So I mean, quite frankly,
right.
they're pretty low. They're pretty low on our list. The third one is good, but the second one with Anakin is
I want to
not
say
peaks on.
I want to say like sometime like really recently after those books is when I started like with the like new releases and we started
Yeah, I
reading
think
the
that's.
books.
I mean, we started our first roundtable was Master and Apprentice, so we definitely started the podcast after.
Yeah.
After
Yeah.
that, I think within months,
Yep.
to be honest.
Well, Kalori was not the only one to learn about Skywalkers in this book, right? Cherry and Thalius discover the whole secret shade house, like Borica, and the whole process called fading, quote unquote fading. And that's what Eric was mentioning with like the brainwashing. They get rid of all the young girls' memories so that it's easier for the military to control them, essentially. And these huge revelations came right at the end of a trilogy, like the last few pages, really. And I want to know, do you think we're going to get payoff from any of that? Like, is that something, are you interested, I guess, to see where this goes? Do you want books about Chiss now? Are you invested enough in Chiss culture that you want books about Chiss that have nothing to do with Thrawn?
Ooh. Those are two different questions.
They are.
Because one, do we think there's going to be payoff? I don't.
Oh,
Okay.
me either. I don't
because
think
I
we're
think-
going to learn any more about that.
Because realistically, you're going on two things here. One, it's Chiss without Thrawn, which I think we would all like. I think is an impossible thing for a general book market.
Yeah.
Yep.
But twofold, you're also, that is a story completely about women helping out young girls. And I think
that
that
would be cool.
Marvel barely did Black Widow 10, 15 years after with a similar storyline. I think, unfortunately, we're still too far away from them being like, hey, it's a book all about women helping young girls live better lives. In Star Wars, they're like, where's the men? I think it's still like stupidly a thing that would harm that book from being published at this point. I think
It would be I would love a Black Widow-esque Thalius comes
it is
back
a
and
perfect story.
kills everybody.
Come on,
I would love it.
Thalius, Borica, and Cherry come together to form a tag team that goes and finds former faded Skywalkers to come and blow up the facilities that have been brainwashing them. It's an incredible spy caper story that absolutely it should be a comic. I think would be the best medium for it. If it gets made, I want to be proven wrong so freaking hard. But because I do think it is the perfect story. It is the perfect setup for that. Zahn, I think, did that absolutely intentionally, but I don't think we're going to get it.
I do very much like the all the family drama and politics that we have with the Chiss, which I think is really rewarding. And I could see it like all kind of playing together. But I mean, I don't think that anybody else would want to touch it as long as Zahn is writing Star Wars books, right?
No one else could remotely figure out the Game of Thrones level, like
it's over the top
Ascendancy stuff.
Only Zahn can do it. So unless he's been invited to do it, then like he's probably not going to do it. And I don't know that they would contract him to write something besides Thrawn, to be honest.
I mean,
I don't realistically see it happening.
No, it's so hard to sell books as it is. Like, they needed Thrawn Ascendancy to be on the cover, or like you need the name Thrawn had to be on the cover of all these books. Hell, the first Thrawn book is just called Thrawn with his face on it. Like, they're like, we need people to buy these books based on their love of the Thrawn character only. And I think that that's why we're getting books now, or the shows are called like Kenobi, Andor. Like, they are blatant advertising characters that you know and love because we are trying to make money. Which again, I don't blame them for.
I mean, we are speculating here. And to answer your question, Charles, like, do we want more Chiss? I think so. I really like the family drama, mafia kind of politics. Like, I want more of that in Star Wars. We don't really have that kind of political drama elsewhere. Like, we have it in the Imperial form, but like we don't really have it in this form with this family drama. I think it works. I think it's fun to read, and I think it works. So, I'm all for it. I'm invested in it. And if we got a book just about Alias or something, or about even like, let's think about other characters like Arlani, or we have lots of really great characters that we could have, Chiss books about. And I'm all for it, man.
The Syndicure, all those politics, like the backstabbing and like
it's good.
All of it would just be.
It's really rich. I mean,
that would scratch an itch that people were looking for, if inner politics kind of stuff that you're talking about.
That would be rad. And Stephanie, you make a great point, Stephanie. Timothy Zahn he wrote Scoundrels and Allegiance without Thrawn.
I
back
love
in the day,
Scoundrels.
I mean,
Scoundrels is great.
If it's just the Chiss Ascendancy trilogy, maybe you call it. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the numbers on these books are. I hope they're good enough. But yeah, if we're just going on pure pitch, an idea. I want the spy trilogy with Cherry and Thalius and Thrawn's sister. I want the political backstabbing and the rise and fall of the families. Maybe an actual civil war. Like,
that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Because again, like you said, Charles, that moment in Greater Good is epic. Because you're like, oh my god, this is gonna be, and then it
Chess
stops.
Ascendancy, Civil War.
And Spider-Man comes in. It's like, oh
Yeah,
Everybody gets one.
no. Yeah.
So talking about the fading now.
Yeah.
So Thalius knows she was a Skywalker, but does she remember any of the like details? Is that what the fading is? It scrubs the details, but you know the overall story of your life. You just don't know the details.
You don't know where you came from or your
So-
parents and your family and all
Yeah.
this shit, right?
Yeah. It erases anything that would give you ties and loyalty to anything other than the just military.
Yeah.
They don't want you to have any reason to walk away from your responsibility to the military.
Like
I wonder,
early
how
memories.
I wonder how that works. Like, is it somebody using the Force on them, or is that how does that work? That's some next level
It's like
shit. Right
Total
there.
Recall
Ice pick.
stuff.
I assume it's
Ice
scientific,
pig.
purely because
Scientific?
like
Okay.
yeah, because like the Force is still a thing that seems to like.
They do a lobotomy on them or something.
I mean, maybe because like
Zap them with some electroconvulsive therapy, like for a little too long. Is that what they do? Like shit.
I mean, there's something to it because like the Force is still like they grow out of their Force abilities essentially in the chiss is their thing. So if you're older doing this to the younger kids, you don't have command of the Force essentially. So it would have to be something scientific or technological
yeah.
to essentially get rid of the core memories. Because I think like they can remember being a Skywalker-ish, kind of what you were able to do, which is why Thalius can kind of identify with Sherry.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think Thalius seems to be described as being a little unique. Like I think she can remember a little more than others can.
Yeah.
So I think it is though, like you said, Charles, it's getting rid of like the parents. It's getting rid of the siblings, like that the most heartbreaking line in the book. Where she's like, I don't care about meeting Thrawn. I don't remember him. Like absolutely broke me in half.
It was
Yeah.
the moment where Hermione wipes her parents' memories of her before she goes off.
Yeah.
Didn't
Exactly it.
Yeah.
And I think
but in reverse, I guess.
yeah, it's a great tactical strategy, but it is obviously horrifying ethically, which I think describes most of the ascendancy, frankly.
Yeah. I would really love to see more of that story. And just as a counterpoint, and maybe like a little ray of hope, like look at the Queen's trilogy that we've been getting. It almost exclusively features young women.
True.
So I mean
Great point.
there is a market for it, certainly. I mean, we all have fallen in love with that trilogy at this point.
That's
Sure.
true.
It's good.
So I mean,
I would
I
love
hope
it.
that they look at that and maybe think it might translate to these stories as well. I'd love to see these characters again.
That'd be
But
rad.
we have got to move on. We got to move on to a big thing. We're going to spend some time on this, I think.
Let's do it.
Perhaps the most anticipated aspect of this novel, thanks to Greater Good's final chapters, and that is Starflash. Right? It's hard to say without doing jazz hands.
Waka waka
And
waka.
I'm going to read y'all a couple quotes that I mashed together, and then we can talk about it a little bit more. So here we go. We no longer remember who obtained the item, that's Starflash, and brought it back to the Ascendancy, but they brought with it a report of what it did, how it worked, and the terrible consequences of its use. The Stybla built the Bastion, the forerunner to the UAG, and hid it away, never to be used. But then, centuries later, came an invasion by a merciless enemy. Our outer worlds were overrun, and the defense force pushed back until only Chila, isn't it Chila? I always say Scylla in my head. Chila remained unconquered. The enemy gathered all of its ships and armies, preparing for what is now known as the final assault on Chila. We knew there was no way we could stand against them, and we knew that if we lost, the Chiss faced extinction. And then the Stybla Patriarch remembered Starflash. We'd never seen Starflash in operation. Indeed, its very design made it a single-use weapon, but we knew how to operate it. The problem was that it would take 20 warriors to activate it, and for those 20, it would be a suicide mission. The myth volunteered. Starflash is an energy weapon, but something entirely different from spectrum lasers or plasma spheres. It sends a massive burst of tachyonic and light speed energy into the surface of the sun, which then triggers a return burst many thousands of times as powerful. Afterward, once the Ascendancy had freed the outer worlds from the minor garrisons the enemy had left behind, the Patriarchs unanimously decided to keep the details locked away in secrecy, never to be revealed to the Syndicate or the general public. What we hadn't anticipated, and what Starflash records hadn't described, was the effect on Sheila's sun. Apparently, the brief disruption of its surface layers extended deeper than expected into its core. Over the next few decades, it began to cool, ultimately forcing Chila's citizens to either move underground or abandon it entirely. So that was just packed full of new information. Like it was all new to us. We didn't know what Starflash was. All we had was a name. We didn't know about this old force that had almost extinguished the Chiss as an entire species. We didn't know why Chila was cold and everyone had moved underground. Like, this was so much information that clearly Zahn has just been sitting on. So firstly, I had to ask, how did y'all feel about the introduction of a new super weapon finding its way into a Star Wars story?
I'm tired of super weapons, but I realize this is a losing battle and it's never going to stop. So, I have to just embrace it every time it shows up. We have so many super weapons, specifically planet killing weapons in Star Wars. Like it's almost like a goofy trope at this point. That's the thing. Super weapons.
I rather take a super weapon over like a disease that like slowly eats away a race or a species or something.
Yeah, it's a little too close to home, Wes.
I know. Just like
if I could never read another Star Wars book about a contagious plague, I'd be freaking stoked about it. Here, real quick, PSA, Star Wars authors, I love you all. If you think you're being edgy by doing the next like plague book, you're not. Please don't. Please don't. We don't want it.
Oh man, I mean, I can appreciate, answer the question, are you tired of it? I don't know. I mean, as long as it's not like a whole fleet of ships and they all have a Death Star on them, I'm fine with it. All right. So.
Okay. All right.
Happy 2-year anniversary of the Rise of Skywalker. Anyway, I was gonna say, Starflash is cool. I like that. It was like the high C weapon, like unleash the power of the sun.
Consequences. I like it.
The high C weapon.
Yeah, I know. It was cool. I loved the. That's what it was.
I'm just imagining those. What were the orangutans? What was that?
That
what was that?
Tang.
That was Tang. All right, Tang was different than high C.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can we do an episode in the future where we figure out which beverage from the 90s each super weapon is? Like, what was the Death Star? It's like, why was the Death Star Capri Sun? We don't know. But
exactly.
Oh my god.
Because it was really hard to stab into, but once you find the hole, it's just done.
I think the Star Destroyer weapons are like gushers, like fruit gushers. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes!
You know how over the top all those commercials were? They eat one, like their head got really big, and they like turned into a superhuman. Yeah, that's kind of what it was like.
All right, preview for that episode. But to answer your question, Charles, I'm personally not sick of big super weapons in Star Wars as long as they make them interesting, and I think Starflash was that. Yeah. I love the
has consequences. That's new.
Yeah, exactly. And I
like that.
the story of the past. That was like there was a small team, and all the families agreed to keep this secret. Like
that was cool.
Wove beautifully into the history of the Chiss, and
I like that a lot.
Like it was just really cool because like it's the nuclear option. It's like we acknowledge it exists, but it's
volcano
so horrible.
option.
Yes, like we got to put it away. So I really like the story behind the weapon, and maybe that's the secret. You can make whatever weapon you want as long as you have a really great story as to why it exists or how it's used. I'm in.
Yeah, and that kind of leads into the second part of the question too, because they introduced this massive idea. They introduced this super weapon, and we're led to believe that when Thrawn goes and visits the UAG, or I would argue it's implied that he leaves with Starflash, right? And that he may use it in the final battle against the Grisks. And yet he doesn't. And I don't know. Did y'all feel cheated by that? Did you enjoy the twist that he actually was using a totally different weapon? If he wasn't using it, do you question at all why we needed all this information about it if it was not actually used? Like, what are your thoughts on all of that kind of that convoluted ending?
I liked it that he didn't use it. I mean, I think it spoke to the morality of his values, like that he didn't use it.
It's the character.
So I liked it.
Yeah. I mean, that's just what y'all were talking about earlier. That's another thing that Zahn could have put in there. Like, hey, I still got another plot twist that I can throw in there about this Starflash thing that I could probably push out 2 trilogies with that. What do you think?
Starflash is still there.
Yeah, I mean, he also wasn't on his own planet either, right? Like he was on at this alien planet, right? Of what was it called?
Sunrise.
Yeah, Sunrise. Yeah, he was
the
on that
sun was
planet.
going to rise if he used Star Flash.
That's right.
but maybe not for much longer.
Yeah.
You really got into your South Carolina there, Charles.
There it was. You're back home, boy.
God willing, and the creek don't rise.
Do your parents have accents, Charles?
No. My dad's from Charleston, but I don't know. My mom's from Pittsburgh, so they just kind of
Hold on.
me, I guess.
Hold on. Hey, do your parents have accents, Charles? No, my mom's from Charleston. And I'm like, yeah, totally no accent at all. Real quick, I would say one more quick thing about Star Flash. I like that he didn't, because I did like Zahn having the last laugh of like, oh, you thought.
Yeah.
You thought, and I don't think anyone likes subverting their readers as much as Timothy Zahn. I think he really loves being a step ahead. But you can feel the like when he's like, oh, I got him. I mean, just again, read the end of Scoundrels.
Yeah.
But I think it fit the story. I didn't feel slighted because the last battle was still really cool, and it showed, like you said, Corey, Thrawn was not willing to sacrifice a ton of innocent lives to prove a point or to win a victory, and I think that makes him different, and I think that basically defines his character going forward. Because if he had used it, I would look at him differently going forward in the canon trilogy and in Rebels and Beyond. I'd be like, this is a man who slaughtered.
That might be like grounds for execution from the point of the chiss too.
For
like
real.
They somehow talked him into just kicking him out of the Ascendancy rather than like literally killing him. So that might have been hard to justify.
It was real good.
That would have gone badly. They pitched the idea of exile to the council, and they're like, judgment is death. They're like, oh shit, we done messed up.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on to some Easter eggs, some connective tissue, some random thoughts sprinkled in there as well. I always have to give you some of those. From page 159, we have this quote: "It was therefore a surprise, but a welcome one, when he'd been traveling for barely 20 minutes when a section of the starscape was blotted out."
I did not catch that.
Nice callback to Palpatine there. That's like
one of the top like meme quotes, like from like prequel memes and shit. Like, is Zahn like tuned into that? I don't think so.
He absolutely is not.
I don't think he is. Like, how did he? This is what an interesting reference to choose in 2021.
Tom, was this you?
He absolutely is not.
Yeah,
Timothy Zahn into meme culture. Oh my god.
Zahn just turns in the first draft, and it says it was a surprise, and then Tom's like, "Have you considered it being a welcome one?"
Very good. I want to know if that was you, Tom. 100%.
I mean, sure. I suppose it would be welcome in that scenario. So, let's put it in the book.
Oh man, I freaking love that.
Moving on to the next one, page 201. Thrawn gives Kilori some Galara tea leaf, and this was a callback to Chaos Rising when it was mentioned that Galara tea leaf was Kilori's favorite beverage. So this was when Thrawn was trying to butter him up, get him to work with the chiss, but it was a nice moment that shows that's Thrawn knows, man. He knows.
Did he write that shit down? Like, did he like put that like in his phone or something? Because there's no way that I would remember that kind of detail.
He knows. He remembers.
You know, they said because I have problems with this. Obviously, I think it's just severe ADHD. That's the big issue. But I can't remember details about like this. You know, I read a part of a biography about Napoleon Bonaparte, and he did that. He had hundreds of little black books that they found after he died, like that he wrote details about people, and that's why he was so likable as a person. So
notes about people.
Exactly. He took notes on people's names and like details about their lives and stuff. And I'm like, does Thrawn do that, or is he just that utterly brilliant that it's in his mind? I don't know.
The world may never know. Another cool moment here in the book, flash flies were mentioned in this novel, and that is something that was actually mentioned in every single novel in this trilogy. And previously it had been used where Thrawn had noticed Cherry drawing flash flies, and that's what helped him deduce her desire to fly ships. That's what led them to their little mini mission together. And so they were mentioned again in this book as well. Tactica was introduced in this novel, which was a Chiss strategy board game. And while that's a new creation in this book, we've never seen it before. it seemed to be kind of the Ascendancy equivalent of Holo Chess. So that was fun to see more board games.
Or Stratego.
Always love it.
Stratego.
That's what it reminded me of.
Apples to apples, if you will. Page 354, Samacro says, there's a lot to see and do on Chile, you know. The lieutenant at the receptionist desk will give you a credit chit good at any hotel, restaurant, or entertainment center anywhere on the planet as long as you need it. And I'm sorry, but like, are the taxes on Chile just unreal? Because who is putting that bill? Like, yeah, just ask for the blank check at the front desk. It's fine.
It's
fine.
dude. It's military spending. If you think the U.S. military spending is out of control, imagine what the CHIS put into military spending. It's just got to be like 98% of the GDP.
I don't know, man. Emily Dayback from Legends Look Back, like we just hung out with them like last night talking about the Army and stuff. And I can tell you for certain that the Army does not have credit chits for the Army to use just wherever they want.
Just pretend that you're a tank.
Yeah.
All right. At one point in this book, we get this quote here. And Corey, you mentioned this earlier. I know you read Senior Captain Thrawn's earlier report about his encounter with General Anakin Skywalker of the Galactic Republic, McKeith said. At the time, the Republic was embroiled in a war with a faction calling themselves the Separatists. According to a group of refugees the Springhawk encountered, aliens calling themselves Neomoidians, that war has ended. So gotta love a good Neomoidian reference.
That was a great reference.
First of all.
That's the story I want. I want the refugee Nemoidians that just live in the Ascendancy now.
Yes.
Like, what's happening?
I don't know. I don't know if I can think about more dislikable aliens in all of Star Wars.
The Nemoidians, yeah. No, you're right. You're right.
The Chiss are already like super racist. Like they definitely don't need to be like the Nemoidians, like to come meet them and hang out on Chila. Like that would never go well.
Yep.
No, they won't.
And more from that same passage, the quotes continue. The separatist forces were apparently crushed or perhaps simply collapsed when their leadership was destroyed. But the Republic also disappeared with a new government rising in its place that calls itself the Galactic Republic. It was clear from my conversations with General Skywalker that the Republic was weak and fragmented, Thrawn said. Its leadership included many different factions and alien viewpoints, and it was continually being pulled in different directions. The Empire, in contrast, is unified under a single man and a single vision. Sounds like General Yiv in the Nicardan, Aralani said with a shiver. Are we thinking the Empire could be a problem down the road? It could, Bakif said, but it could also be a solution. And it was just really cool, I think, to see the events of Revenge of the Sith referenced from an outsider's point of view. Someone who doesn't know what the Empire is, doesn't know really what the Republic was or the Separatists were, and just talking about this so flippantly, right? Like these events so casually.
I know. That's why I say I loved it. It was brilliant.
Yeah, that's great.
Really incredible.
Yeah, I wonder. I really want to know how the Chiss. Like, I'm telling you, I want that story of Thrawn alongside Order 66 happening. Because, like, what would the Chiss think about this? Of like all the tyranny and awfulness of the Empire, actually? Because Thrawn doesn't really seem to give a shit. Like the whole time he's in like Rebels and stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Or is it effective? You know, that's the thing. The Chiss like really prioritize efficiency over a lot of stuff.
Now that I'm thinking about it, I thought if Thrawn was there during this time, he would be kind of taken aback about it. But now I'm thinking, well, he was in Rebels and he knew it was going on. He knew about all the
he already hates democracy. Like, screw screw freedom. What the hell is that all?
Keep people safe. I'm going to keep you safe, and I will shut you in your home under lock and guard to do it.
Yeah, I mean, they would probably be like, so you put a chip in everyone's head so that you can control their actions. Hold on, Magus, come here. Like you can do this.
We have an idea. Brilliant.
On page 545, Thrawn is speaking. He says, I'll gather whatever information I can about the Empire, then return and discuss my findings. Quietly, of course, with Supreme General Bakif and the Council. Between all of it, I don't expect to be gone from the Ascendancy more than a few months, a year perhaps at the most. Now, according to the Utini timeline, which I trust with my life, this book takes place in 19 BBY. And the latest book in the timeline involving Thrawn is Treason, which takes place in 1 BBY. So finally, Thrawn was wrong about something, guys. He said he'd be gone for a few months. And as far as we know, he's gone for at least 18 years.
18 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
So that's just a cool moment.
Well, probably more because in Rebels, that's after the Battle of Yavin, so even longer. My
Yeah.
goodness.
True. I mean, this dude just disappeared.
I don't think Thrawn disappeared after the Battle of Yavin, right? I think that happened. The Rebels concludes after Battle of Yavin, but I think Thrawn and Ezra disappeared before that. I'm pretty sure.
But no, I think he's just saying
Right.
that those events in the TV show are even after Thrawn treated.
Oh yeah,
I
sorry,
mean,
sorry,
yeah,
yeah.
it's
That's what I meant. Yeah, sorry, yeah. To be clear,
It's definitely around that timeline. What the hell is the Chiss Ascendancy been doing for the last
What's
20 years?
Aralani doing? Is she like, is
Yes.
this guy gonna? This guy, I ask him out in a date to a museum, and then he ghosts me for 18 years. It's a long way to go not to go out with Aralani, Thrawn. Come on.
Yeah, for real.
All right, on page 547, Bakif says, I have to admit, though, that I'd always looked forward to seeing how you looked in Admiral White. I suppose I'll never get the chance
That was
now.
a great
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a nice in-joke for us readers, right? Who, at least those of us who are familiar and met Thrawn as a Grand Admiral and heir to the Empire, because he was already in that white uniform. It's a very iconic look, which is a great moment. Now, some of the best quotes, I think, from this book. Page 11, Thrawn is speaking to Nakir, and he says, in my experience, superior wisdom can stand on its own merits. It does not require a warship to force acceptance. Loved
Like
that
that.
one.
Yep.
Page 500, if there was one thing Aralani had learned about power, it was that for far too many people, a small and fleeting taste wasn't nearly enough.
Mm-hmm.
That was a good
And
quote.
then lastly, 531, Thurfian says, a little wonderment is good for the soul, almost as good as a little humility. That's probably the best quote of the whole book, I think, and also one of the nominees, right, in the Utinis right now.
Yeah.
For
it was
quote
Oh
of the
my
year.
gosh. Wait, Charles, you're telling me people could vote for that quote right now?
Right now. Right
Yeah,
now.
I think there's a place they can go. I think it's utini.com/awards.
Wait, they can
They
go to
can go?
utini.com/awards and vote for that and this book for Book of the Year right now?
They
And if
can
they-
go to utini.com/awards and vote for this book and other books for Book of the Year right now.
And if
Wow.
they burn their fingers and their hands are all wrapped up, they can go to the description in the bottom of YouTube and just click on it.
What? It's in the description, including
Let
all the
us-
links to everything we've talked about during the show?
I can't believe it.
This bit went on way too long.
That escalated quickly.
But if one of you
Marks
click,
on
it's
the ends
worth
of our
it.
sentences.
And now, just finally, the final Easter egg is literally the entire epilogue, right? Because it was straight from the first canon Thrawn, like everything just wrapped up so neatly in this nice little bow where we ended exactly where we started things, however many years ago it was now. But that was really incredible, and I wanted to give that a shout out because that was
Yeah.
a ton of fun.
I literally grabbed my first Thrawn off the shelf and went, I'm like,
Same.
wait a minute, I bet this is. And then you look at the prologue and you're like, you son of a. Like,
Yeah,
exactly it.
yeah,
Yeah,
incredible moment.
the prologue was great. It was a tearjerker.
All right, y'all. Well, those are the Easter eggs that I have for this book. So it's time to go back around to wrap this up. Let's re-rate this book and then give me any final thoughts that you have. And I believe that we started with Wes giving his score at the beginning of this. So Wes, I'll go to you again.
I'm going to keep it at a 9.7. I believe that's what I had selected it as. I really, really enjoyed this, mostly because throughout the entire trilogy, I was just trying to pick out the small details of how the hell does Thrawn get exiled from all of this. It seems like he is, even though he plays a shit political game and he can't really read the room very well, he is a master strategist. He is an absolute like icon to the military that you have to have in order to be successful in any kind of a mission. So how could you get rid of him? And like that was evident throughout both the first two books. So I was just like, how are they going to exile him and why would they do it? And eventually, I mean, like, I guess politics and everything compounded on top of each other, and he disobeyed a direct order, and exile is the only reason. But I guess that payoff at the end is what really got it for me and made me give it such a high mark, because I really enjoyed that part of the book.
All right. So strong showing 9.7, and it stayed there. Eric, you go next. What do you think?
All right, I think I was at a 9.4. At the top, I think I'll boost it 9.5. I'll say this book was fantastic. It was really, really excellent, and I think more so than anything, this book and this trilogy really made me love the character of Thrawn in a way that I haven't found yet. I've said before, I'm not the biggest fan of the original Legends trilogy. I didn't really find an extreme connection in the canon trilogy, and I liked him in Rebels as a villain, but I like Rebels for other reasons. This trilogy made me love Thrawn, and I think the highest compliment I can give is that whatever character comes out of this trilogy and is put in other material, whether it's Thrawn, Thalius, Orlani, Sherry, the Grisk, Thurfian, freaking Samcro, whoever shows up, I will be excited and I will know why. And I think that is very key for a trilogy to introduce this many characters, this many new things about the politics of a whole culture in another sector of space. And I followed it and found it enjoyable and interesting. And I can't wait for more, even though we just got over 1,000 pages within a year and a half. It's really, really, really impressive. So happily give it 9.5. Really glad this was the last book of the year. I think it ends the year on a really wonderful note.
That's true. We learned so much about about the Chiss, but like there was so much to learn, like their hierarchy and all the new characters and everything that happened. It's like basically a whole nother galaxy that we learned about. It was a lot in a little bit of time.
That's definitely the point that I was going to make. Is like I don't see how you could possibly give any of these three books that like from the Ascendancy trilogy like anything less than a 10 for originality, because it is arguably the most impressive world building we've ever seen in Star Wars canon. I mean, it's so rich in the families and the histories and the cultures and the languages. I mean, good God, like he didn't just create the Chiss, like he created like 10 different aliens and languages and like the names of their languages. Like it's nuts. Like it's really, really insane just how heady all this stuff is. Like Zahn is literally kind of a genius, like at this stuff. I mean, it's pretty impressive. I mean, I would argue that even all of the crazy new era High Republic stuff, like, you know, this would go kind of 2 for 2 with that as being original creative Star Wars storytelling. So like, you know, if you think this is any less than a 10 for originality, you're nuts. Like, I think that's a hard rule.
Your cashews.
Exactly. I'm gonna stick with my 9.4 is what I gave it. You know, I kind of skimmed our YouTube review order there for a second to kind of look at other 9.3, 9.4, and we gave the first Bane book as the official review is a 9.3. So I'm like 9.3, 9.4 is probably pretty accurate for me for this book. Like, I loved it. I feel like it was a little convoluted at a couple of small places. I do have that sort of kind of aching dissatisfaction that we didn't get the Grisk like story told like in a conclusive way. You know, even listening to the audiobook, which happens at a pretty slow pace, the whole last battle of the book was pretty complex and convoluted to try to get my head wrapped around what the hell was actually happening. But like, I think overall you're absolutely right. Like all the side characters, even beyond Thrawn, which I'm with you, Eric. I absolutely love him as a character now. Like, I love him so much that I'm afraid for the future for him as a character. Like I'm like legitimately concerned that like I'm trying to manage my expectations, right, about like the Ahsoka show and stuff. If that's where it's gonna be hard, man. Like it's gonna be hard to think that Thrawn is only a villain. I think going forward after this trilogy.
We'll
so
see.
There's gonna be people out there who don't know who Thrawn is though. Who he's gonna pop into some TV show, and then you're gonna have friends that don't know him. They're gonna look at you. They're gonna be like, what do I need to know about Thrawn? And you're going to be like, well, and you're going to come back with a stack. You're going to be like, read these 9 books.
Yeah. And, you're like, look, it's got blue pages.
It's really incredible hearing y'all talk about just the world building in this trilogy alone, and thinking about the fact that we got that on top of the High Republic just in this past year. It's kind of blowing my mind looking.
That's like 20 people are working on High Republic or something insane like that. And Zahn, like you said, Eric, works on this in a vacuum. Like he's like by himself, just coming up with all this genius level idea stuff. And it's crazy. It's crazy that he creates this stuff. And he has done so for like freaking 40 years. It's insane. Yeah.
He's just in his own room being like, winglets.
95 times. 95 times. You lose 0.1 of a point right there just for that, for winglets.
Would have been a 9.5. Would have been a 9.5.
Happily of the egg buoy. I say that out loud in my house probably twice a week.
That's how he lets Doc know it's time for dinner.
Happily Blackberry.
That's what he sounds like in the audio. That impression is really spot on, Wes.
very much.
You've clearly been practicing that.
Oh my God! All right, Charles, you top Wes's impression with your numbers.
I think that I will keep my number the same. I gave it a 9.3 at the beginning, and I'm going to keep it there. I think it was a fantastic book. I think it's so I mean, it almost gives you whiplash going from Ronin to going to this book, because it was like, let's take the fantasy aspects of Star Wars and run with it, and then anything by Zahn is like, let's take the sci-fi aspects of Star Wars and run with it.
Sure.
And
Exactly.
it's so cool that we can get these types of stories, just all kinds of different types of stories, right next to each other in the same year, on top of all the other stuff we got. I mean, really, this has been, I know I'm not even just talking about the book right now, but this year in Star Wars publishing really has just been incredible.
Yeah.
And
I think it's
unlike
been
what
the
we've had
best.
before.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to argue this has not been the best year in Star Wars publishing, like since Disney bought Star Wars. Like, I mean,
I would agree.
This entire year has been nuts, and like it's stuff like the Thrawn Ascendancy trilogy and the leading High Republic novels that make it so much fun to do this goofy Star Wars podcast thing like every single week.
Yeah.
Like, because it's so fun to talk about. It's so rich.
Yeah.
Like, we are so many layers deep into Star Wars. Like, and I'm not sure how much more nerdy we could get about Star Wars at this point. Like,
And we'll
But we'll
find
try.
out in 2022.
yes, we will.
Yeah.
The roundtable discussions themselves help me understand the book. Like, just all those details when we run through, like the plot summary and then all the character descriptions. It helps me remember. It's like studying for the test that I'm supposed to have about this book tomorrow, right? But never gonna come. Thank God. I still have that horrible dream that I got one coming up.
All right, y'all. Well, I mean, incredible scores across the map.
Yeah,
sure.
very high.
It's crazy to look back at not just this year, but the Thrawn Ascendancy trilogy just in general. So with all of that, that's a wrap for this roundtable, and that's a wrap for 2021 roundtables. And I will kick it back to Eric to take us home.
All right. Like Charles said, that is our last roundtable of 2021, which means next week is the Utinis, our final show of the year. We are celebrating everything great that came out this year. We are giving away awards. And if you don't watch our video show and you have time, it is the night to do it. We will have new overlays. We will have ourselves dressed to the nines. We will just have a great time figuring out what the book of the year is going to be. Will it be Thrawn Ascendancy Lesser Evil? Will it be Rising Storm? Will it be Light of the Jedi? Will it be Victory's Price? And of course, all the other categories. We can't wait to celebrate with you all at the second annual Utinis, December 27th, 8 p.m. Eastern. We will see you live, or we will see you later as you watch, record, or listen. Regardless of how you choose to take it in, we hope you have a great, safe holiday season, hopefully surrounded by those that you love if you are able to. And we hope we're able to add to it as best we can as we look back at 2022 and forward. Nope, messed it up. Back to 2021 and forward into the absolutely ridiculous that'll be 2022. My friends, my winglets, that'll do it for this week's episode of The Living Force. If you support us on Patreon,
Don't ever say that
thank
again.
you.
What the hell,
I will
Eric?
say whatever I want. Thank you so much for your support. We hope you're enjoying all the extra content we got. And of course, tell us on our Discord and Patreon what else you'd like to see from us. A special thank you goes out to Cheryl Bell, and our Jeremy Kazina, JG Kars, Earl Q, Patrick Ortiz, and Carl Sander on our Jedi High Council, and Matt Billington, Tyler Latour, Elizabeth Cloutier, Jason Mitchell, Freddie C, and Sally and Chris Eilerson on our Alliance High Command. And a special thank you to our very own Stephanie Mack, who has been here the last 2 weeks in the chat, constantly giving great comments all about Thrawn, and of course about everything. If you ever see your comments on these videos, Stephanie, we love you. You're an incredible part of this community, and absolutely love all your thoughts on all things Mr. Thrawn. You can find us on Twitter. We're at Living Force Pod. I'm at Eric Eilerson. Corey is at Doc Star Wars MD. Charles is at C. Hankel. Wes is at Boss Wes. A special thank you to Matt Davenport, our amazing editor, Ryan, our graphic designer extraordinaire, and Wes, our producer and community manager. Thank you to Corey, Charles, and Wes for podding with me tonight. Thanks to all of you for watching. We will see you next week for the Utinis. And as always, may the force be with you. UTD.com/awards.